Welcome to Givers, Doers, and Thinkers. Today we chat with author Bill Kauffman about localism, minor league baseball, and how our two Uncle Sams make the thriving of civil society difficult, and a lot of other things too. Let's go. Givers, Doers, and Thinkers introduces listeners to the fascinating people and important ideas at the heart of American civil society. We speak with philanthropists, nonprofit leaders, social entrepreneurs, historians, journalists, and anyone else who will help us understand contemporary civil society's achievements and failures. We also sprinkle in practical advice for nonprofit leaders and fundraisers. My name is Jeremy Beer, and thanks for joining us. All right, thanks for being with us. Bill Kauffman, a native of Batavia, New York, is the author of 11 books, among them one of the books that has meant more to me personally than almost any other, Dispatches from the Muck Dog Gazette, which won the 2003 National Sense of Place Award from Writers and Books and made Bill the mostly unacknowledged father of localism, at least to my mind. Should be acknowledged more. Well before anyone was going around saying to buy local or wearing T-shirts that said, I'm a localist, or talking about being a locavore, Bill was elaborating what localism means, and we'll talk to him about that. He's written many other books as well, a couple of which I had the honor of editing when I was editor-in-chief at ISI Books. Those would be Look Homeward, America, which the American Library Association named one of the best books of 2006, and which won the Andrew Eisenman Writers Award from the University of Rochester, and a biography of Luther Martin, the drunken anti-federalist forgotten founder, which is a really fun book. He's also written a number of screenplays, including the one for the 2013 feature film Copperhead, and his writings have appeared in numerous publications, including the Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, and the American Scholar. He is, in addition, a regular columnist for the American Conservative and for the Spectator USA, and a founding editor of Front Porch Republic. Bill has made a big deal of going back home to Batavia after working as a legislative assistant to Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan some years ago. But as everyone knows, he really lives in Elba, which is at least 3 miles north of Batavia. So in actuality, Bill is a hypocrite. With that, how are you, Bill?
I'm fine, Jeremy. It's a real honor to be here with you.
Your hypocrisy, I'm sure, eats away at your soul every morning when you awake in your historic house in Elba, New York.
I'm a phony, yes. In fact, I'm sitting here with the computer hooked up, and I'm staring at the wall. I feel like the guy in Blair at the end of a Blair Witch Project. So I hope this ends better than that.
I do too. Believe me. Well, let's just start there a little bit with your story of coming home, because it leads naturally into the topic of localism. And you write about this in Dispatches from the Muck Dog Gazette. And what happened? How did you go from being in D.C. and to decide that you were going to make your home in Batavia/Elba?
Do you mind if I engage in some self-mythicization?
Please, no. I expect you to engage in self-mythicization.
Is embellishment permitted? Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, I grew up in Batavia, which is a small city. Population, actually now it's 14,000. Has been dropping for quite a while in the western part of New York State, in one of the most agricultural and rural counties in our state, which is to say a colony in the state of New York. And as you say, I worked for Senator Moynihan for about 2.5 years. But I'd always been intensely homesick no matter where I was. And I... From there, anyway, I ended up working out in Southern California. I was an editor with Reason magazine. But increasingly, I had this sense that a life lived anywhere other than my natal place would be evanescent and meaningless. So I came home with my wife, Lucine, which is Armenian for Darlene, I think, or maybe it's Lurleen, Jolene. She's not here, so I can say this.
Like John Mellencamp, you brought your California
home. Anyway, she was a native Los Angelina, so I suggested to her, I said, as a 1-year experiment, let's move back to my hometown. And it turns out that was 1988, I guess it was. So that this year is measured in these Old Testament Methuselan terms. So I figured we're up to about February 11th right now. And yeah, so we came back, She actually adapted very well. I mean, within, as you say, a few years after we were in town, she was coaching high school tennis up here, about 5 miles north of town. So we moved into a house up here. She actually served 2 terms as town supervisor, and stepped down only because she thought if 2 terms were enough for George Washington, is enough for her. But she had, I think a lot of people.
Elba.
Yeah. Yes, she was actually she was once denounced in a letter to the editor by this great cranky local farmer who wanted this access road open as the boss hog of Genesee County. And she said you could at least call me the Daisy Duke of Genesee County. But anyway, she adapted supremely well. Having grown up in a place, Southern California, where there's constant turnover. Your high school, 20 years after you graduate, there's probably almost no one, none of the children of your classmates will be going to the school. And, and certainly when we lived in D.C. and, an apartment, I mean, we could have huge impersonal apartment complex. I mean, we could have been, it could have been choking to death on your own vomit, and the people in the next apartment wouldn't care.
Lovely image. Thank you for that, by the way.
Yes, I'm sorry. Well, yes, it's lunchtime, isn't it? Anyway, so we got back here. We've been here for over 30 years, and it's not all bliss, but I mean, obviously it's much easier to idealize a place when you're not living there. Lord Acton said that exile is the nursery of nationalism. But once you're back and you see the warts and all, but I don't know. It's Booker T. Washington said, "Cast down your bucket where you are," and it doesn't have to be your hometown. It's just it doesn't even have to be the place where you live right now. I mean, but at some point you have to do that, I think, or else everything is just fleeting and transitory, and you never make a connection. So for better or worse, we did, I guess.
It's one of the things you meditate on, if I recall correctly, in Dispatches on the Muckdog Gazette and many other of your writings as well. This how difficult we make it to have any sort of rich community life, civil society, to use the wonky term that we use here, when there's so much mobility. And I remember you kind of opened my eyes to that. That geographic mobility, so much celebrated in America, is actually a problem. If it deserves to be celebrated, it also deserves to be thought of as a problem as well, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's a great undiagnosed malady, I think, of American life, and as I think I wrote in the book, it's also it's embedded in the language. I mean, you consider a couple of colloquialisms. We say he'll go far of a promising young boy, and this is praise, thinking that success can be measured in the distance one has gone from home. Whereas if we say he ain't going nowhere, we're not praising him for his steadfastness or his loyalty to his place. You're saying he's this sort of ambitionless sluggard, a loser, and that's really, I think, that assumption is really embedded in popular culture. The sense that anyone who stays home, I suppose, or goes, anyone who stays home is a loser. Anyone who goes home must have failed in the wider world, and almost the entire ruling class in this country consists of extremely mobile, if not rootless people, who have no particular loyalty to a place. I mean, their loyalty is maybe to their career or their class or whatever. And in my view, this has political. We probably don't want to get into politics too much, but this has political consequences in a variety of ways. I mean, one of which is I would argue is our foreign policy, where if you don't care about your own backyard, the place where you live, then you see no problem with sending our troops hither and yon to cause mischief in all parts of the world.
No, that's right. And how does it affect? I mean, it's a trope now, 2 generations at least of scholarship about the decline of American civil society, sort of the thinning out of our associational life. I mean, obviously our mobility is clearly one of the causes of that. What else would you put your finger on there? Like, first of all, what are we talking about when we talk about civil society? In your mind, and then what are the things
Well, I
you
mean,
think about?
they're the sort of voluntaristic associations that your man Tocqueville spoke of, and that exist still. I mean, certainly they were even stronger when I was a kid. I mean, just say the various community fraternal organizations, Kiwanis, Rotary, this sort of thing that, one of my favorite writers, Sinclair Lewis, used to lampoon mercilessly. But these were signs, I think, of a community's civic health, Little League, things like that. And they don't have to be even organized in
Right,
in that
right.
way. But,
In fact, the less organized, the better in many ways, right? For civic health.
pardon me, I missed that.
The less organized, the better in many ways.
Oh yeah, well yeah. As a congenital anarchist, I agree. I mean, in fact, I'm involved with some. I've actually forsworn any kind of political involvement locally, even though I write about politics quite a bit. I mean, my activities are pretty much all cultural. Some of these are through established organizations, the Historical Society or the Landmark Society, whatever. But there are also extremely unorganized groups that work. I mean, we honor, for instance, our native son writer, a novelist, John Gardner. We have a John Gardner Society, and it's been going on for like 25 years or so. We've never had any organizational meetings. We have no budget. We have no officers, and yet every year we have a couple of events. We put on we gather one of the last 2 Saturdays every October at this very funky diner called the Polka Dot, which has been around since the late 40s, and it's very unself-consciously funky. It's not like there are hipsters there,
No, it is not. I've been there, and I can testify to its non-hipster character.
Completely, yeah. But it was Gardner, who was one of the last American novelists who grew up on a farm, and it was very interesting. Well, it's funny. If I had to make a list of my 100 favorite novelists, he would not be on it, but he's ours, So we do this, and we gather every year, and of a late October evening, because one of his most famous novels is called October Light, and we read his words, and we kind of conjure his spirit. And it's a great gathering, and you used to get like 20, 25 people, which for Batavia Cultural, that would be like filling Madison Square Garden. It's and it's also great because usually there's a couple of guys like sitting at the counter who didn't come for this, because we do it like the last hour that the place is open, and so they're sort of with the grease, they're also inhaling culture, and but yeah, that's a kind of totally unorganized event group that's that I think is an example of healthy civil society, and if it can exist even in what is often as dispirited a place as the place I live, which is kind of part of the Rust Belt, and we're not doing well economically, blah blah blah. It can exist anywhere if people would simply take their eyes off the computer and refocus on the things nighest to their hearts and their lives.
Well, that's just it, right? So I was going to ask you, I mean, that John Gardner is one of yours, but I know because I've been present at many of your lectures where you'll be in some random place like Delaware and start telling the audience about the greatest, literary figures and political figures, cultural figures in Delawarean history, and none of them know anything about them, right?
Except Joe Biden, right?
And so it's a real, like, how do you, we've been sucked into sort of an abstract life by our media, our technological media and capabilities. How do you get back out of that?
That is an excellent question.
I know there's no real answer, but that's
yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is when I give these talks, people nod in agreement. There's always a couple. Like I've spoken to a lot of colleges over the year, and there's always a few kids who come up afterwards. You just kind of see the light in their eye, and they'll tell me about where they're from. And I don't know, what can we do? But I mean, I don't have any kind of preaching bone at all in me, but evangelize in a way, and and hope that it'll spark or further an interest in where they're from or where they're going to end up, or just the place where they are. I mean, it has to be. I really distrust like centralized authority and any kind of grand schemes or proposals. I mean, there's a sense in which the schools are complicit in what's happened because they've de-emphasized local history and they're obsessed with not only standardized, obviously the standardized tests, but also, excuse me, also kind of nationalized curriculum, all this No Child Left Behind crap.
Yeah.
I think we should leave children behind. I think a lot of times they're better off being left behind.
I love it. Yeah. Well, that's probably not a winning political slogan, but there's a truth to it. But your point, if you don't love where you are, where you're from, or where you are, the chances of civil society flourishing, associational life flourishing, are just about nil. They just there's almost no chance it will happen, and it seems almost there are powerful interests. This is not said in a conspiratorial way, but just their structures are such as to not want us to necessarily love where we are, but to be paying attention to things far away. They're produced, far away by centralized sorts of, I'm thinking Hollywood and things like this.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, a lot of the media. And this cannot solely be blamed on. As much as I detest the internet and such, it can't solely be blamed on that. I remember years ago just traveling around, and it's sort of depressing to think that a kid in Missoula and a kid in Dorchester, Massachusetts, are watching the same TV shows, listening to the same music, and so.
Protesting the same things.
Exactly. Protesting. Sure. Yes, exactly. The nationalization of some cause, which is, it reminds me of, remember years ago, this stupid kid fell down a well in Texas, and this became a big, baby, whatever the heck her name was, and became a big story, and people were praying for the little child in the well. The kid was rescued, but the people who were all wound up in this, watching CNN 24/7, their next door neighbor, the old lady next door, was dying of loneliness. It's just, and they're blind to that. Andrew Lytle used to say, turn off the radio and take the fiddle down off the wall, and that applies in a variety of contexts. And
charity as well. You're right.
Yeah. Well, you are Mr. You are Mr. Local philanthropy. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Instead of writing out a check to some 501c3 and taking your tax deduction and feeling good about yourself, get involved in something locally.
Yeah.
You can see the results there. You can actually help people at a local level, one-on-one. And I'm sure this runs contrary to all this Bill Gates stuff, but
it's giving.
You've written about that brilliantly, and I highly recommend the philanthropic book.
Thank you. It's true. One thing, the modern approach to giving or helping others, let's put it this way, or trying to change the world, is there's no attention to what it's supposed to do to you. And in the Christian tradition, the Jewish tradition, charitable giving is supposed to transform you more than anything else, your own heart. And if you don't get involved more than writing a check, don't involve yourself in even a sacrificial way, you're going to miss out on that, the riches that can accrue to that kind of.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
Acting. Yeah. Well, let me cash a check on something I said earlier about the two Uncle Sams. I was referring, of course, obviously Uncle Sam, but also Sam Walton and Walmart to stand in for sort of big business in this role. Because I know you have thoughts on this. We talk about civil society and it's non-commercial, non-governmental entities, but it strikes me that the smaller the commercial enterprise, the more it really is part of civil society. Small local businesses are maybe indistinguishable, almost at least, from small nonprofits in the way they may be, involved in a positive way in the community, in a way just the structure of a Walmart can't be. Am I right about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the community. I mean, you could see it in Batavia when Walmart cometh, and our last remaining department store, Cars, which I write about at some length in the Muck Dog Gazette book, and other places closed. And so, so business sort of becomes imbalanced, all the big boxes on the edge of town. And some of the consequences, my wife was involved with the United Way for years. And, the big companies are far less charitable. They always have to check with corporate, before they make a donation. Yeah. And this even filters down. Yeah, this even filters down to things like Little League sponsorships, where, it used to be the team when I was, playing Little League, teams were all sponsored by Kiwanis or Lions or whatever, or the local optometrist or the corner deli. And as these places disappear, Walmart's not sponsoring Little League teams, I've been involved for many, many years, like most of my life, actually, with our local minor league baseball team. The same thing. I mean, we need to, to stay alive, we need to sell advertising on the outfield wall, and again, the local shoe store, the local clothier and such, they were always the guys who bought those ads. Walmart, Kmart, Target, they do nothing. I mean, these are leeches who suck the life out of your community. And the thing is, I mean, there's a way in which we're all complicit. I mean, if I have to buy computer paper, I have to go to one of those stores. I mean, no local place sells it. But nevertheless, in a lot of ways, more importantly than voting, casting our vote, which is, what you go down and you're, it's meaningless for the most part, voting, but you vote with your time, and you vote with your money too. And those are votes where your vote can really make a difference. Are you going to get coffee at the local shop, or are you going to get it at Starbucks? You're going to buy seed at the local greenhouse, or are you going to go to Home Depot? I mean, these are the choices that we make every day, they have
impact civil society.
Yeah, right? And in their aggregate, they have enormous consequences, and it's something that people ask, "Oh, what can I do?" Well, that's what you can do.
Well, hey, Bill, let's take a break. We'll see if we can get you to come out of your shell and really share your real opinions when we come back. Okay, a little time out here for some practicalities, as we do during these podcast episodes. And today, I have Ian Bernhoft, managing consultant of the Writing and Communications Department here at American Philanthropic. How are you, Ian?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jeremy?
Good. For the sake of everyone out there, Ian just joined us recently, and he teaches English at Providence College. So has a sort of proper credentials for talking to us about writing and communications. Ian has written a number of articles for us on Philanthropy Daily. You can find them on philanthropydaily.com. Just type in his name, Ian Bernhoft. And some of those articles, there's a series you did on storytelling. And your main point was, well, I remember the main point of the first article anyway, which was that we should look at our communications, letters, even our organization's entire story as sort of like a fairy tale that sort of has the structure of a fairy tale, right? Am I remembering that?
Yes, exactly. That when you look at effective messaging, basically across fields, be it in research proposals in biology, be it in investigative journalism, be it in academic writing, you have this sort of pattern of establishing a kingdom, introducing a problem or a dragon, sort of epistemic disruption, showing why it matters, the stakes are raised, the dragon is laying waste the countryside, and then a resolution at the end. And that this is a sort of universal pattern which is hardwired into us. And so we would do well to tap into it in all our messaging.
Yeah, your point is we really remember fairy tales well, like our brains are, as you say, hardwired to remember them.
Yes, yeah. People say it's sticky in a way that other presentations.
Yeah, stories stories generally are stickier than facts, right?
Much stickier. In a good way. It's the right kind of sticky.
Well, I don't know if I'm stepping on what I was going to ask you because that wasn't planned. But okay, we're getting to the point where people are starting to think about their year-end letters, the year-end asks. Give us 3 things from a writer's perspective that people should be thinking about as they craft those.
Okay, so speaking of facts and the relative stickiness, I think the first thing that I would want somebody to remember as they were crafting their year-end letter is that an effective end-of-year letter is not an update of everything you did in the past year. And I see this sometimes, and I'm sure you do as well, where it's like, in 2019, we were at 85 conferences and we, advised 72 legislators and we met with 374, so on and so forth. And that's fine. There's a place for it, but of its own, that doesn't do much to remind a donor why they should care or why they are a part of the organization. I don't know if you got these as well when you were growing up, but we always used to get Christmas letters, right? Where it would be like, this past year, Lance became an assistant regional manager and Gail took up kayaking and Todd was the ghost of Christmas. And you have to be a Grinch to complain about those letters too much. It's a nice sort of like human thing, but it's also deeply uninspiring genre, right? Where it's like, well, the Joneses got through another year of mundane existence. Good for them.
That's about the best we can all hope for. All right, so don't do that. So don't do that. Don't do that.
And, well, let me tack a rider onto that. The other thing I would say don't do is build it around a sort of, okay, this is a last ditch attempt to shake a few dollars out of people's pockets before tax season. That's important, but that's not going to differentiate you from any of the other organizations that are writing them in December. So instead, what I would say is the end of year is a golden opportunity to remind your supporters why your organization exists and also to affirm some sort of shared sense of purpose. So, you can take, as you survey the year back and the year forward, you can take this sort of broader perspective and remind them, what is the problem that our organization exists to solve? Why is that important? Why does that matter? How do we solve it? How are we making a difference? And then how are you part of that? And so overall, again, and that follows that storytelling pattern we were just saying of establishing the problem, why it matters, what we're doing, what the payoff is. And so it's this opportunity to sort of, in broader terms, reaffirm some sort of shared sense of higher purpose with your supporters and include them in that. Now, the third thing I would add then is what follows from point 1 and point 2 is that the details you include, all those media appearances and scholarships and hot lunches, all that stuff needs to serve the story. It needs to be folded in insofar as it exemplifies what you're talking about, but be subsumed as evidence within this more compelling story. And you never want to lose sight of that, the bigger picture. And I think the same goes with the tax breaks, right? Like it's good to remind people of how they're potentially saving money, right, to give compensation, but only after you've shown why do they care about your organization, and why are they continuing to care about it in the first place.
That's great. It's hard. People lose sight of that all the time. So, hey, appreciate the reminder. Thanks a lot, Ian.
It's my pleasure.
All right, back with author Bill Kauffman talking about localism, civil society, community, associational life, all those good things. You brought up the muck dogs. I want to give you a chance to talk about that because it's another sort of, I guess, commercial venture that's really sort of an anchor of civil society in Batavia over generations. And it's gone this year, of course, and maybe gone forever. But talk a little bit about how that has served to sort of as a glue in your town.
Oh, yeah, completely woven into the fabric of our town. We 1939, what became the New York Penn League, which is single A, the lowest level or almost the lowest level of professional baseball. The league was founded in a meeting here in Batavia, 6 teams. It's endured. It's right now the oldest continuously operating single A league in in baseball, though that may soon be ending. And so for 81 years, there's been baseball here every summer, and it's. I grew up like a block from the park. My dad was like a bat boy ball shagger. I did some of that stuff, and I've just been in the stands, and it's helped to give our town an identity. It's a shared experience. It cuts completely across class lines. I mean, small cities are much less class divided than larger places anyway. But there are no social distinctions in the bleachers, and it's I love baseball. I love watching the games. You've had a lot of great players over the years. I mean, to me, what's really beautiful about it is the people in the stands, and it's a multi-generational thing, and just when I'm there, I not to sound all mystical or anything, but Chesterton spoke of the democracy of the dead, and I like feel the presence of the people who, since I was a kid, have been there, and then they're gone, and new people come, and it just gives you a sense of continuity, and that people in this little town have shared this now for 80 years, And yeah, it's. Jeremy, you've been to games. You've written a great book on baseball, so you know what this kind of stuff means.
I've sat in the stands with you and your friends, and you're exactly right. And I remember joking with you because, like, in the stands and like the 12 people that you always sit with, whatever the right number is, there's like a former Jeopardy champion. There's the editor of the local paper. There's a guy who works at the local museum and like has his hobby of going to vice presidential grave sites. I mean, all really interesting people, very smart, different walks of life. And yeah, what you said just now about a sense of continuity. I mean, that's what's celebrated is disruption, right? If I had a dime for every time I heard the word disruption every day in my work life, I'd be rich. But that's what's celebrated: innovation, disruption. But we actually need continuity as human beings. I mean, it's really important to our sense of well-being. Disruption and innovation is clearly related to the sort of sense of hyper-anxiety that we're suffering through right now.
I think absolutely, and we're suffering a little of that right now because we are in severe danger of losing the team. I mean, the league expanded willy-nilly about 20, 30 years ago into larger cities. And so they've always even though we're the birthplace of the league, they've always wanted us out. It's like we're the smallest team in the league. I think we're now the smallest team in smallest city in professional baseball. It's unfashionable. But we were always a community-owned team, kind of on the Green Bay Packer model, which professional sports hate community-owned teams. The only ones that exist were somehow grandfathered in. I mean, you can never have that again. And through a series of unfortunate events, as the children's book title goes, we lost that community ownership a year ago, and anyway, and now we're getting hammered by the majors, which want to wipe out 40 some minor league teams, the lowest level of the minors, and which is just I don't know. Do we say forgive them, Lord, for they don't know what they do?
I don't know.
I'd rather see these bastards strung up. Actually, I guess I'm not very Christ-like.
Few among us are.
Right.
I mean, I've thought of if Major League Baseball did really care about community life, if they even cared just about growing the sport, if they had any sort of long-term vision, they certainly wouldn't be in the business of closing down professional baseball in dozens of communities across the country. A couple of things. Right. A couple of Bill you said I think are really just I want to touch on before we move on about what makes for a good civil society institution. Giving a sense of continuity, that's really good. Class, like including if it is inclusive of people from different classes. I think it's really important. Like if I'm like building a checklist, like that'd be on there. And then the multi-generational, like these are things we struggle with, right? We have fewer institutions that are multi-generational now, it seems like, than ever. And
yeah, I agree. And I think with the class thing, I think of the our local historical society, which oversees the museum, and I was on the board for many years. It always struck me, and actually our former congressman Barbara Conable was a great guy. He used to talk about this. In larger cities, bigger places, people relate to each other unidimensionally, and which he hated. In a small place, like if you're on the board of the historic, because you see people in a variety of aspects, you relate to them like multidimensionally, like they're full people. I think about like the historic side. I remember we had. I just remember two members. One was this very out gay person. One was a leader of the local Assembly of God Church. Now if they lived in, I don't know, if they lived on the internet, let's say, which is where so many people live, that's the only way they would have related to each other. They would have hated each other without knowing each other. But because they knew each other, because they saw each other around town, because they were cooperating in labor, this labor of love of neighbors, they were friends. They worked together. There was no enmity, no friction. And I think that's so. Yeah, I mean, I think that lack of class distinctions and lack of other distinctions on in civil society groups is critical, and that's why I think scale is always important, because you get to too big a scale, and you're going to get all people from professional classes, and they're going to be circumspect, or they're going to come in with a set of prejudices, whatever, and it's not going to work. I suppose that's why I'm sort of a radical decentralist. I don't see how things can work at a bigger level.
Well, they certainly, it's a really good point. I mean, the bigger you get, the less able you are to promote a sort of multidimensional relationality that is the only way we keep from being at each other's throats. I mean, that was the next question I was going to ask you is like, what the heck is happening right now? Why are we at each other's throats, so distrustful, so suspicious of our fellow Americans? I mean, is that just the logical results of not engaging with each other chiefly through civil society and our associational life, but abstractly through the internet?
Obviously I have a parti pris in this debate, but yeah, I think that's a lot of it. And, and also obviously the lockdown and the uncertainties and the unease that's introduced have contributed to that. And schooling, actually.
What do you mean by that?
It is true that this sort of centralized curriculum, I think, has encouraged young people to despise their ancestors. And I say that not as someone who thinks we should, be reading Parson Weems. I mean, there are very few people who detest the American empire as deeply as I do, but but I have great respect for the people who built this country. I mean, the heroes and the knaves alike. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like if I think of mid-19th century, they all seem a part of me. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Frederick Douglass or Robert E. Lee, or a runaway slave, or Henry Timrod, the Southern poet. I mean, they all had a role in creating this country, and I don't know if that kind of feeling is inculcated in children anymore. It's a stupid Manichaean thing, where there's the good guys and the bad guys.
Right. There's a sort of dehistoricization, to coin a terrible word. It sounds like you know these people as humans. It's not, because you have sort of deeply engaged with them and their work and in history. You know them like the people you were talking about on the library board knew each other. Sort of warts and all. Not that you approve of everything about them, obviously, but yeah, if you dehistoricize things, you get Manichaean sort of good and bad um, sort of view of society and history. And why wouldn't you despise somebody who's obviously just a villain, right?
Right, absolutely. And so how do we pull back from that?
Yeah.
Without I'd say radically reforming education, without radically de-emphasizing social media and communication via the internet, without returning a lot of our institutions to the human scale. I don't know. I mean, I don't have big plan. I mean, I think you try to brighten the corner where you are, and if enough people do that, you get positive change, I guess.
Yeah. I have a question from our producer behind the boards, which using modern media.
Tell her to come out from behind the boards and ask it herself.
Her sound isn't good enough to come out from behind the boards. I would like her to do that, but she's asking, "What about?" Here's her question for you. This is Katie Janis, our producer. What about the hypermoral? What about the hypermoral younger generation attempting to live in a smaller community with folks they disagree with? Seems impossible because if they find out you disagree on one point, they quickly condemn.
That's a very good question, Katie. I was actually thinking about that the other day because there are I know a couple of folks who would probably be considered hypermoral, or I mean, there's certainly their position on the issues of the day is easy to predict, and they know that I disagree with them on some of these things, and I don't know. I mean, I've never had any conflict with them, and I think that's because we know each other. I mean, there's a knowledge of a background. We kind of know the backstory of each other, and there's a level of trust and respect. If you don't have that backstory, I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's fireworks go off, I guess. And I don't know. I mean, I guess we just need to take the time to get to know one another and they kind of diffuse that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, certainly I read about people who won't talk to relatives or something because they vote the wrong way, and I think that's insane.
Well, I guess one of the common objections, Bill, to his line of thinking is like, oh, all this concern for localism, for a community integrity or self direction. Isn't that all just a cover for racism and intolerance? And wasn't it necessary to break through that in order to reach a sort of greater level of racial equality in America? And therefore, isn't it necessary to continue to breaking through all that, not allowing it to sort of reform if we really want to have a just society? What do you say when you get that objection?
Well, I mean, I guess I would say that, I mean, historically, certainly in the first half of the 19th century, it was the people who wanted to return power to the localities who were those were the abolitionists. Those were the people who wanted to emancipate the slaves through things like personal liberty laws, which defied the centralized Fugitive Slave Act. I think that politically, a kind of decentralism. I mean, it can be used both ways. Obviously, some southern states in the 20th century protective of unjust systems. But I don't know if you don't this idea that there's some sort of expert and disinterested class of wise men who live remotely and who should have the power to dictate events and affairs in your community. I mean, I don't see it. I mean, to me, what these people do are, there's never been a local government that has sacrificed hundreds of thousands of Americans in foreign wars. I mean, those really grotesque acts that the U.S. government has committed, or the Indian Wars, the genocidal campaign against the Indians in the 19th century. I mean, these were acts of the central government. They weren't done by a bunch of local yokels.
Here's a kind of naivete in the objection that that those who will do the watching and breaking down and ruling of the local community from afar are themselves, as you say, like a council of wise people who are
right. Yeah, I mean, they're
at heart.
Yeah, they're placeless people in the professional class, who've been wrong time and again. And
let's I'm going to switch gears on you. I want to give you a chance to talk to this because no one can answer this question other than you. Because no, seriously, no one.
It's not going to be too personal, is it, Jeremy?
Tell us about your.
I don't want to reveal anything about myself.
No, really, I don't know anybody who knows the history of America, certainly the history of its literature, better than you. So I want to draw you out on this. Like, who are the great American writers when it comes to really understanding the dynamics, possibilities of community, place, civil society? Can you give us a few, like the people should, if they're interested in this, they should look up and get to know?
Well, I think you and I would put Wendell Berry, the Kentucky poet, novelist, farmer, at the top of the list. His poetry, and I would write he's written any number of great novels about the fictional town he calls Port William. The book I would my favorite of those is Jayber Crow, about a town barber.
One of the greatest novels ever written about a barber. I mean, I think we can definitely say that's the case. Are there other barber novels?
That's a good question. Well, my friend Henry Clune, who's a very good Rochester novelist, once had a novel in which the local barber was a peeping Tom. But I think Jayber Crow is probably better than that book. Books about I'll give you one. I'll give you a writer really out of left field who I think is like one of the most misunderstood writers in American history. Is Sinclair Lewis, who was considered the great writer of what they call the Revolt Against the Village. He wrote in the teens, 20s, 30s, supposedly mocking small towns, mocking the provincial Minnesota in which he grew up. But in fact, Lewis was a great Minnesota patriot and localist, even in his actions. Memorizing the counties and all 87 counties and county seats in Minnesota, only buying artwork from Minnesota painters, speaking to like ladies groups and saying that he wanted to make Duluth the new Athens, and everyone thought he was joking, but in the manner of Johnny Rotten's great line, "We mean it, man." I mean, he meant it, and so the book there I would recommend is Babbitt, which is often seen as a satire of these moronic small town businessmen. But in fact, Lewis's target is conformity and standardization, and the idea that the people in Zenith are aping the bigger cities. In Lewis's view, and this goes through all his works, Zenith and the small towns of America would reach their potential if they were true to themselves and if they stopped looking outward for confirmation. And to me, this is one of the things about this is one of the problems of the provinces, is that a lot of times the people who are in control of, say, cultural life in institutions, they believe that the things in their own backyard are sort of second rate. And they take their cues from, I don't know, the New Yorker or something like that. They take their cues from people who despise them and people who, New York City. There's more diversity of opinion and thought in the Topeka, Kansas branch of the Women's Christian Temperance Union in 1905 than there is in the entire performance artist community in Manhattan and Brooklyn today. I mean, these people are the worst kinds of conformists. Who looks to them? They're not interesting. 50 years hence, is anyone gonna watch or read or listen to that stuff? No. No. I mean, that's why we need writers and painters and musicians, poets to spring up from the provinces, and they don't have to be these rural pastoralists or anything like that. But they need to tell us how they see their places, through their eyes, through their experiences. That's what we need. I mean, that's where any kind of regeneration, revivification of the moribund American literary and art scene is going to come from. It's not going to come from the New Yorker.
Well, let me ask. Okay, that's wonderful. One last question before we let you go, Bill. So where do you see any of those green shoots today? I mean, do you give us a little bit of hope amid the darkness?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, gosh, look at say the community supported agriculture. Farmers markets, organic farms, the craft brewing, the renewed emphasis in some quarters on craftsmanship, things like carpentry and such. There are, and I know a number of people around the country who are writing about, who are interested, who are living locally centered lives. Obviously, if you look at political strength, we're completely unrepresented politically. both of the parties, the two wings of the bird of prey, as Gore Vidal said. They both despise us. But the what's left of the heart and soul of this country, we're it. And these I think are examples. These are things that people respond favorably to. People prefer farm markets to buying something on Amazon. I think it obviously many more people buy things on Amazon, but it makes people feel better. It gives people a sense of connection to the place where they live, and we need that. And so, yeah, I see, I'm kind of innately a hopeful guy, but, I see a lot of reason for hope. And besides, despair is a sin, right? And it's no fun.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, exactly. Not only is it sin, it's also no fun.
Right. That's more important, right?
Yeah. Bill, thanks for your time. You can find Bill. He's not much online, but he does have a website, billkaufman.net.
It hasn't been updated for several years.
Oh,
but
it hasn't? Okay. Well, I remember when it came out. It was great.
But you know what? I really haven't done anything for the last several years. So visit it. Buy the books, all right?
Buy the books. Don't buy them from Amazon. Buy them from your local bookshop.
Right.
Or directly from the.
Although I do think the film I wrote that was made Copperhead, I'm told, is on Amazon Prime. If you're a member of that, you can see it for free. So
wonderful film. I totally recommend it to anybody who's listening. Yeah, check out Copperhead for sure. Bill's writes for American Conservative and Spectator USA all the time. Thanks so much for being with us, Bill. Appreciate it.
I enjoy it, Jeremy. Thank you very much.